Dan Labbe with Mary Kay Cabot and Scott Patsko here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and we are reacting today to news that Deshaun Watson has reached settlement agreements with 20 of 24 women who filed suits against him. There are still four accusers who have not reached a settlement agreement, interestingly, and we'll get into this. One of them is the original lawsuit from Ashley Solis, who of course was also in that HBO special that we saw. She spoke to Soledad O'Brien on that. So she is one of the four who has not settled. But Mary Kay, as this story has sort of developed throughout the day, 20 of 24 lawsuits, I guess your reaction when you found out about this?
Well, it just seems like it's a big step for Deshaun to move forward in his football career, in his life, to get these suits behind him. And of course, he wanted to clear his name, but to drag his name and everybody else's name through 24 suits probably wasn't going to be good for anyone in the end. So I think this needed to happen. I think it was a necessary step. I also think it would be helpful for everyone if they could maybe settle the final four and get the suits off the plate. And then what they need to do after that is just work through whatever the NFL's discipline is going to be. But I think that this was a very big development today.
Scott, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it was kind of surprising because we had heard, Mary Kay said he went back to the same thing. I wanted to clear my name. He said way back when he was introduced that it wasn't his intent to settle. But things change, obviously. And I do think that if he is ultimately able to settle all of them, then you don't have that trial date hanging there all season. And even if there is a suspension, it is like you see a light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, for maybe more so for our sake on covering this team than everybody involved. Obviously, people directly involved in this, it isn't simply going to end because there was a settlement, but I think for fans, for the franchise and all that, it's a huge step.
Yeah, and in fairness, as we said, when the grand juries chose not to indict, that wasn't necessarily an admission of guilt or innocence. Same with these settlements. It's not necessarily an admission of guilt from Deshaun Watson to settle these cases. I mean, Mary Kay, this just felt like if this was going to drag out over the course of the season, and this was going to be hanging over the team and hanging over Deshaun, and these things were going to go to trial, in a year at the soonest. It just felt like this had to happen at some point, or this was just there were going to be more suits. Tony Busby has really just taken a blunt hammer to this thing. Like every Tuesday, it was some sort of new news. So it just felt like this had to happen for everyone to start moving on, at least as best as they can.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Busby was getting ready to file 2 more suits and to join the Texans on the suits as a defendant. And I'm sure at some point the Browns probably stepped in and said, okay, let's get these things settled. I mean, the Miami Dolphins said that they put that condition on trading for him in 2021, that the suits had to be settled. So I'm sure for the Browns' $230 million investment, they felt that they could speak up and probably say, let's wrap these things up as best we can. There are a lot of negotiations and discussions that go on between Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. I'm sure this was part of it. And again, it's time to try to move forward. Could you have imagined trying to try 24 civil suits and the details that would have come out and the mess that would have been? I just never believed that was going to be able to happen like that. That would have dragged on for years. Now, depending on what the NFL decides to do, who knows? It could be kind of mostly football from midway through the season on, or whatever the suspension is.
Yeah, Scott, it sort of sounds like maybe this surprised you a little bit, but there was a part of me that felt like this was inevitable at some point, especially hearing the Haslams talk after they made the trade. It just sort of felt like maybe they didn't say, hey, you have to settle these, but I did get the sense that, like, man, it would be really great if you could just figure this out and get these settled.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was kind of expecting this to kind of just be there all season, and then there would be everything happening early next year. But like Mary Kay brought up, I wonder how much everything kind of piling on here over the last month contributed to this. And everybody kind of getting a sense, maybe more so than they had originally thought, that it's not just that it's not going away, it's that it's staying front and center. And there's continually, who knows if it was, if it stops at potentially 26, 28, 30, 35, whatever. And even though you're talking about the same time frame, it's adding on to things everybody's talking about. And it's just, it's front and center. And that's a lot different than there being 22 accusers and it remaining 22 accusers and everything just kind of going forth from there. I think maybe the last month had something to do with this.
I think front and center is the key word, because I mean, look, the reality of this is the accusations were still out there. That New York Times piece still was written, right? These things don't just go away. Like whatever happened, if Deshaun was in the wrong, whatever happened in those rooms, right? It still happened. And all this information is still out there. All these accusations are still out there. So it doesn't necessarily go away, but just strictly from a football standpoint, and frankly, what the Browns probably were hoping would happen over time when they made this trade, this is no longer front and center. It's not going to be every Tuesday. There's going to be a new story about this, and it's going to make the Browns, I mean, there's still going to be a bunch of fans that feel betrayed, and rightfully so. But from a strictly football standpoint, Mary Kay, this at least allows them to start moving on.
Yeah, I think that's what the Browns expected right from the outset. I think they felt like there were going to be a couple of difficult press conferences, some bad press, losing a little bit early on in the court of public opinion, and that they would then move on to football and winning football and lots of it. And we all know what happens with winning football. It heals a lot of things, especially in Cleveland, especially, the Cleveland Browns. I mean, if the Browns start winning big and Deshaun Watson does amazing things on the football field, that's gonna mean something in the eyes and the minds of a lot of fans in this city. Again, this issue is always going to be there to a certain degree. But this means that turning the attention to winning football, because this team is poised and built to go to the Super Bowl very soon, then, I think once those things start happening and, the passes start getting completed and the games start getting won, depending on what the NFL decides to do, I do think that there will be plenty of people who are able to move past this to a certain degree.